So, how many landfills does Bangalore have?
Officially about 7. There are a lot of quarries that are being also illegally used.
What is the impact of these landfills that are surrounding us now?
We are a densely populated country. Now, the dry waste that is generated at your home can be segregated into up to nearly 176 categories I know of. What happens to the waste once it leaves your home? Open air burning is one of the worst things you can do with waste. Biggest issues that all cities are going to face is pollution from two major things. One is mobility, which is your transportation. Second is in terms of waste.
So, what can I do as a citizen to change this from my end?
If you mix it, I can't fix it. The better it is done at the point of generation, the higher the chances that it will get recycled. We sometimes underestimate our own agency as individuals to bring about change. Ramchi Dilli, near my house, and when he started, he was using all disposables. I kept going back to him and said, you have to use reusable plates. Then he finally agreed. He changed.
Villages are pristine and villages are untouched, and the waste problem has not reached the villages.
Oh, the waste problem has reached the villages. Thanks to Prahlad's bottom of the pyramid strategies, we have these 1 rupee and 2 rupee sachets. They're all non-recyclable. 2 battery Duracell packaging, but that whole packaging is about 10 square inches. Can you design out that waste? Indore was an example of political and bureaucratic will. It took one commissioner to make it happen. Vote with your wallet, right? The minute a brand manager sees that his or her market share is going down because these people are going towards more sustainable products, the market share leader will change. Children are the best change agents within a household because they will go and say, Dad, you put it in the wrong bin. Our value proposition, for example, to our clients who pay us for the services, 90% of the waste will be responsibly processed and managed.
If a model like this exists, why is all of Bangalore not doing this? Think about this. Every time you unwrap your groceries, open a bottle of soda, or toss away a takeout container, you are adding to a massive stream of waste that most of us never think twice about. Bangalore, the IT hub of India, generates about 6,100 tons of waste every day. Today's guest saw what many missed, not just garbage, but an opportunity to transform our relationship with waste and the people who handle it. Meet Shekar Prabhakar, a former tech exec who traded his corporate career for a mission that starts right in our kitchens. In 2015, he co-founded Hasirudala, a social enterprise that's revolutionizing how Bangalore handles its waste, dry, wet, and rejects. We think waste goes away when it leaves our doorstep, but it finds its way back into the air we breathe, the water we drink, and the food we eat. Through this episode, let's understand how we can all play a significant role in protecting the future of food for generations to come. Hi, Shekar. Welcome to Good Food Talks.
Thank you for having me, Avajna. It's really great to be here. And I look forward to the next one.
So, what we do on this podcast is basically have conversations around food. Try and understand what is happening to the food in today's day and age. How is it getting affected by, what are the factors that are affecting the air we breathe, the water we drink, and the food we eat, right? So we've been having multiple such conversations. We had Vani Murthy on the show who came and spoke to us about composting and the impact of composting and not composting on food. Right. And today we're very excited to have you and the conversation that possibly is a continuation of what we've already had with Vani ma'am.
Sure.
So thank you so much. I'd love to start by, with you explaining to people who are watching the show as to what is it that you do and why do you do it?
Sure. Hi, I'm Shekar Prabhakar, co-founder and CEO of Hasiru Dala Innovations. If you're wondering about the tongue twister of a name, it was a name chosen by waste pickers, the community that we work with. And what we do is at Hasirudala Innovations is actually create business models that do one of 4 things. One is, can we give opportunities for entrepreneurship so that they can actually aspire to being more than a minimum wage worker? or a supplemental income to their waste picking income, or a predictable income like employment with us or with our clients. And if they're already trading in waste, how can we increase their revenue and profits? So all our business models are oriented towards meeting at least one of these goals.
And why do you do this? Like, how did you get into this?
In July 2015, they had started all of this, and Annamma, a waste picker that I knew for more than 5 years at that time, she walks into the office of the trust with her three daughters. The youngest one walks up to me with a handwritten English invitation, inviting us to the Grahapresham of their new home. Now, I knew Annamma as a bag-carrying waste picker earning between 50 to 200 rupees per day. Every time there was a rain, their hut would get flooded. They would sit on a table through the night till the water receded. And here she was 5 years later, having accessed public housing land and built the house herself. And I actually cried because the quantum change in quality of life that she had been able to bring about, because all that we had done was provide her an opportunity to be an entrepreneur as the operator of a dry waste collection center. And she has done all the hard work. And I said, if this is possible, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And that's how we started Hasiru Dala Innovations as a private limited company, to take the business model that was piloted in the not-for-profit and scale it in the company.
You spoke about entrepreneurship for waste pickers. Can you just elaborate a little more on that?
So, interestingly, every waste picker, right? And I'm talking about free-roaming waste pickers. That is, people who pick up valuable waste either from the streets or landfills and sort it to some extent and sell it to the nearest kabadiwala or scrap dealer, are the community that we try to work with. And they happen to be the most marginalized of the urban poor. So they are inherent entrepreneurs, right? You and I could become a waste picker tonight. There is no employer-employee relationship, no official license to be got, and no working capital required. The only thing is to quickly learn what is tradable and what is not, so that you pick up only that stuff, right? Because you are constrained by the amount of waste that you can carry on your shoulder, right? In a bag. So they're inherently entrepreneurs. But how do we provide them with opportunities that help them scale, that help them professionalize? So the first business model, for example, where we provide waste management services to bulk generators of waste who are defined as anyone generating more than 100 kilograms of waste a day, municipal solid waste. So what we do is contract with these bulk generators. It could be an apartment complex, a corporate campus, a college campus, for example. We do the Bangalore one, and so on. So we, as a company, we do all of that. And we identify a waste picker who can become an entrepreneur. We buy him a truck for which he pays over 4 years.
Okay.
So he creates an asset for himself. And he does the primary collection of all three streams of waste for us. He gives the company, we have a transfer area. He brings his truck where we transfer the organic wet waste and the rejects to a larger tipper or compactor. The wet waste goes to a biogas plant, and the rejects goes to a private landfill. But they get to keep all the dry waste, which they take to their godown and sort it into up to 35 categories and sell it into the recycling chain, because that's what they know best, right? I mean, inherent skills are to figure out what is tradable and so on. So, that is one source of revenue that they get, and we pay them a monthly fee for picking up all the waste, right? So they have two sources of income: a fixed income from us and a variable income depending on the quantity and quality of waste. Right. So the waste picker, therefore, is the entrepreneur, and that business model includes them and provides them an opportunity. Just to give you an idea, Lothfer, the first entrepreneur waste picker, started with us. Typical waste picker, tattered clothes, used to live in literally a tarpaulin shack. Today, after 10 years with us, he owns 4 trucks. He employs 30 other waste pickers. He's been filing his IT returns for the last 6 years. He's been paying his GST for the last 2 years. And now he's looking for land to build his own home, right? And all his children went through school. He did such a terrific wedding for his daughter about 2 years ago. So that is the quantum change in quality of life within a few years, in their lifetimes, in our lifetimes. That is what that entrepreneurship model, and we are big on the entrepreneurship model because it gives them agents access first to markets that they can't access by themselves. It gives them agency, and therefore they're able to aspire to being something more than a minimum wage worker, right? So we talk about access, agency, and aspiration.
That's brilliant. And what part of Bangalore does Hasirudala cover? Like what percentage of Bangalore?
We have hardly scratched the surface. We do about 400 bulk generator clients, and I think there are more than 50,000. So we have hardly scratched the surface. The reasons are many, largely because though there is this rule that the municipal corporation will not service the bulk generators, a lot of the tendered contractors continue to do so. So there is no implementation of the rule. And they obviously, because their costs are already covered by the BBMP, they use the government machinery and destinations. The costs are very low. So sometimes they'll give a price which is 1/5 or 1/10 of what we charge. So it's been difficult to get it. And also, whenever you're trying to change status quo, and status quo itself has an inertia, right? But status quo with vested interests will actually react violently, right? So we have had situations where our trucks have been hijacked. Nalini has been threatened with death. My co-founder has been beaten up. My waste pickers thrown into jail, right? Today, we are less hassled because they've realized we're here to stay, right? The only way to stand up to a bully is to stand up. So that's what we have done.
It's amazing. So if a model like this exists, why is all of Bangalore not doing this? Because there's a recent report which says that the amount of waste Bangalore generates on a daily basis is more than 6,000 tons. And what is happening to all of that waste? And how much of that is being managed today professionally versus how much is, ending up in landfills?
Right. So 6,100 tons. So one of the problems is there's no clear data that is available. But my own estimate, we actually, as a city, we generate about 8,000 tons of municipal solid waste. And to your question as to how much is responsibly managed, I would say maybe 5 to 10%. Everything else, in my opinion, is going to the landfills or being dumped by the lakeside or by the roadside. And we have a lot of quarries, which abandoned quarries, which are typically government land, being now filled up.
Oh my God.
Right. I visited about 2.5 months ago, clandestinely, because you can't get official permission to go into a landfill. It is heartbreaking, right? The land just next to the landfill, right? The actual bushes have died. You can see, another 100 meters away, they're green. But this one next to the landfill is gone brown, is dead, right? Because the leachate from landfills, firstly, contaminates the groundwater. And if you look at the leachate flowing, it's like really, it's black water, literally black water. That's one. Second, uh, as the landfills, I think so composting is typically aerobic, right? But anaerobic conditions start forming in a landfill just because you're dumping waste on top of waste. So there is no air, right? Because the weight of it. So actually methane is produced, right? And methane, as you know, is multiple times more harmful from a greenhouse gas emission perspective than even carbon dioxide. So that's the second part. Then there's the whole thing of rodents and pathogens which lead to diseases and so on. So a landfill, especially if it is in a area where people are living around it, is one of the worst. Unlike the US, for example, where they have sufficient land where the landfills are away from habitation, right? And they do much more scientific landfills. They capture the methane and use it. Our landfills are not at all that. And therefore, landfilling is not something that we can continue doing as a country because there is just no, we are a densely populated country, right? We don't have the stretches of land that an Australia or an US has to continue down that path. And therefore, it is time that we started becoming responsible about our waste management. And it has to start from the citizen. But obviously, the government has a lot to do with it. You need political and bureaucratic will, but also citizen participation.
So how many landfills does Bangalore have?
I think it's officially about 7. But it's difficult to say because there are a lot of quarries that are being also illegally used for dumping.
And that's not counted as landfill?
It's not being counted officially as landfill.
Okay.
But then again, as I said, these are, a lot of stuff happens because transportation of waste is one of your largest costs. So the contractors sometimes, cut corners.
They want it to be closer to the city.
Closer, and so sometimes they don't necessarily take it all the way. Again, it's sort of a complex thing, the way contracting is done and so on. So, but I think officially there are about 7 landfills.
Okay. So, like a lot of times when we throw stuff at home, right? Like when we dispose of stuff, we think as long as it goes outside my house, that's all I am, worried about. Now you're telling us that there are about 7 landfills around the city that we are living in. What is the impact? So one is, of course, there is no away. These things are not going away. They are around us, right? And possibly will be around us for the next 700-800 years, right? Like that's the lifespan of plastic. And anaerobic plastic, I don't know, maybe it's even longer. We don't know that. So what is the impact of these landfills that are surrounding us now on the air that we breathe, the water that we drink, and the food that we eat?
Yeah. So firstly, just from a air perspective, one, I talked about methane. Then there is ammonia, there is H2S. So there are a lot of harmful chemicals that are also being generated, right? Because that's the natural process of degradation of organic matter, for example. And then there is the volatile organic compounds as well, which lead to smell and so on. So the air quality, right, definitely decreases because of landfills. Then you have the additional things. So far, touch wood, we haven't had a situation in Bangalore where landfills have burned, right? But if they burn, like it has happened in Bombay, it has happened in Delhi, Kochi, and so on, it's not only a threat to the lives of people around, but also to waste pickers who pick up valuable waste from landfills. But just the sheer when it burns, and you're burning plastic, you're burning paper, everything, right? So when you burn plastic, for example, like a kurkure packet, I mean, the kind of chemicals that come out are actually carcinogenic, right? So so the air quality is definitely highly impacted by landfills. No two ways about it. And as I said, if a fire ever happens, God forbid, it'll be terrible. The second is in terms of water, all right? The leachate from the landfills, all right? Leachate is the, if you look at your organic waste, 80% of it is water, right? And as weight comes on it, it starts leaching from that. And that leachate, right, is highly toxic. And it goes into the groundwater, contaminates your groundwater. So if a landfill, for example, is near an aquifer, it not only impacts the groundwater in that area, but also it can impact bore well somewhere else, many miles away, right? So water contamination is another large thing. That's why they talk about scientific landfilling, where they put a liner in the landfill so that the water doesn't seep into the earth. But we don't follow that the way it should be, right? They just generally put a tarpaulin and.
So what happens if it doesn't seep? Where does the water go then?
So hopefully it'll evaporate, right, over time.
Okay.
Right. And in the case of methane, you can also capture methane in a scientific landfill so that doesn't go into the air, right? So the air and water, definite contamination, quality indices come down. But, like I talked about how the land next to the landfill, the plants were dying, which means land itself is going toxic and going dead, non-arable, right? So all your natural resources, which we take for granted, which is your air, water, and land, is getting contaminated by the waste we generate and how irresponsibly it's being managed, right? And so the consequences of irresponsible waste management is quite large, quite immediate, and it can affect you in ways that you didn't realize, right? You think that as long as it has left my premises, it's like out of sight, out of mind, right? I don't really care what happens to it after. I think we all start to need to start caring about what happens to the waste once it leaves your home or office or industry, right? It is, I think, very important for us as individuals, whether we are just a citizen, resident, or we are a business person, we need to start truly wondering what happens to the waste. It's not about getting it out of your premises.
Right where I stay in JP Nagar, there's this empty site very close to our home, and unmanaged waste, people are coming and dumping over there, right? And once in a while, we don't know who lights that whole thing on fire. And we have a scientist who lives on our street. He works with NIMHANS. And I remember once my mom was walking on that street, and he literally, he ran, he was trying to douse that fire, and he told my mom, go home right now. You please don't breathe this air. That's how toxic it is. But when I'm driving around in Bangalore now, I see people burning waste in many different corners. It's not even in the outskirts of Bangalore. It's actually happening within the city. And it's very, very scary. and you're waiting to get out of that place, and you think, okay, if I'm not smelling that air, maybe I've moved past. But I don't think it works like that.
No, I mean, obviously the proximity to where it's burning, obviously there's higher toxin levels, but it is affecting because there's wind. I mean, it's not as if it's
Yeah.
it's a room,
Yeah.
right, or a combustion chamber that you're burning it in. It's not under controlled
Yes.
conditions.
Yeah.
So burning of waste is one of the biggest issues. And of course, what hits the headlines is the Punjab farmers burning their stubble and therefore affecting Delhi's AQI. But it is true. I mean, it does affect your air quality. It does put out carcinogenic toxins in the air. And it also increases your particulate matter in the air, right? Because
Yeah.
what was something fully solid is now
Yeah.
particularized, right? Whatever doesn't burn. So burning of waste under conditions which are not controlled is one of the worst things. And we actually, one of the campaigns we have done with our waste pickers and all our entrepreneurs, for example, actually, as part of our contract with them, they say they will not burn the waste.
Yeah.
Right? And so things like multi-layered plastic, which we collect, we actually send it after the segregation, we send it to cement factories because they can burn it as an alternate fuel. It's called co-processing fuel, as an alternate fuel to coal. Because their chimneys have scrubbers and filters which take off those fluorines and so on, the harmful gases. All right. So it has to be done under controlled conditions.
Yeah.
Open air burning is one of the worst things you can do with waste.
Yeah.
But it's a very easy thing, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you're sort of, it disappears.
Yes. It's gone. It's someone
So,
else's
right? It's just
God's
black,
problem now.
black charcoal at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So, but it's a huge issue.
It
It's a
is.
huge
It is.
issue.
Yeah. And I think the more, even in the outskirts of Bangalore, where I think waste management is still not, collection is not happening, right? The way it is happening in core Bangalore, the problem is even more. It's
right. And so who are the people who will burn it, right? Someone who's getting affected by it because they're next door and they want to see it disappear, or the local authorities are doing it because they're not able to manage the waste, and someone creates a fuss, so they want it to disappear. So those are the right. And sometimes, of course, it's accidental. Right,
Yeah.
someone throws
Yeah.
a burning cigarette butt or something like that, from the car onto the thing, right? But this is a huge issue, and today, if you, those of you who travel by road, if you're going into the villages, you will see by the roadside
Yes,
leading up
they're
to the
burning.
villages.
Yeah.
So much of plastic, right? And a lot of times you'll also see these burnt
Yes.
patches,
Yes.
because that's one way to quickly get rid of it,
Yeah.
and doesn't pile up.
Close to Banarghatta Road, opposite that, there's a lake. They're burning plastic every single day. I
Right.
drive past that stretch every day. I think if there is an empty plot, people throw waste over there. And if people are throwing waste, someone is going to come and
Absolutely.
burn that waste, like the unmanaged waste. So let's speak about managed waste, which is what you do. And let's see the contrast to say how much of this managed waste can actually, can we keep out of landfills?
Right. So our value proposition, for example, to our clients who pay us for the services is that at least 90% of the waste that we take from you, as long as you segregate it well at source into 3 categories, 90% of the waste will be responsibly processed and managed. Right. So typically, we find that between 60 to 65% of the waste is actually organic wet waste, like your food scraps, leftover food, and so on, which actually we take to a biogas plant that we have set up, and we make actually 3 climate-friendly products. Compressed biogas, which is basically 96% purified methane, which replaces LPG cylinders, which is a fossil fuel, right? Second, liquid fermented organic manure, which is great for conditioning soil, especially before planting, or making land which has been dry and non-arable to make it come back. That will take a little longer time, but if it is arable land, it's great for conditioning the soil before planting. And then solid organic manure with very good carbon CN ratios and NPK values, because we use the digestate and mix it with dry garden waste to give that absolutely terrific organic manure. So nearly 60% of your waste, there's no wastage from a biogas plant, right? The digestate slurry as well as organic manure can be used by farmers to replace chemical fertilizers, and the biogas can replace LPG or CNG. Now, for the past week, we have signed up with GAIL, Gas Authority of India Limited. So our gas is actually going into vehicles for transportation, replacing CNG, which again is a fossil fuel, right? So it's not just being responsibly processed, but it actually is creating a positive environmental impact by bringing down your GHG emissions across, right? The dry waste, right? Interestingly, what we put as dry waste in our bag is things like paper, plastic, metal, and so on, right? A large part of it is recyclable, right? But to make it recyclable, right, the recycler needs it in as homogeneous a category as possible. Now, the dry waste that is generated at your home can be segregated into up to nearly 176 categories. I know of, might be more, before it can actually be recycled, right? And therefore, it needs skill, it needs knowledge to know which categories to put it into, so that it can be recycled back, hopefully, into a similar material or a similar resource. And we are able to nearly all the dry waste. We are able to responsibly manage either through recycling or, as I said, sending it to cement factories as co-processing fuel. All right. And so, 90% of the waste you generate can be responsibly processed into useful resources or products. And as far as the recyclables and the inorganic dry waste category are concerned, they can be repurposed into resources that go back into the economy, right? And therefore brings down the use of virgin material.
I think like some of these conversations can be very daunting for a lot of us, right? Like when you listen to the fact, I mean, when you know this, that there are 7 landfills surrounding Bangalore, itself gives me a very scary picture. So what can I do as a citizen, to change this from my end? What can I do, as far as my community is concerned? And what can I do by asking government something, to help change this situation for my city? Do you think you can?
Sure, of course. Yeah. So I think first thing is to, as a generator, right, take responsibility for your waste, right? And what does that mean? On a daily basis, ensure that you segregate your waste into just 3 streams, right? Which is organic wet, like your food things. Second is inorganic dry, which is your paper, plastic, and so on. The third is rejects, which is a combination of domestic hazardous waste and inerts, which cannot be recycled or biodegradable, which is things like your diaper waste, used sanitary pads, medical bandages, blooded bandages, your medical sharps, like your insulin, if you're taking insulin, the sharps, and so on. And inerts like broken ceramic, broken glass, interestingly, toenails and fingernails, nothing can be done about it. Sweep dust, right? Those into rejects, right? And if you do that, That's the first thing.
Yeah.
Then second is to ensure that, for example, if you live in a gated community, can you ensure that your housekeeping takes it in those three separate categories? So just you segregating is not sufficient. It has to be collected separately and taken to the right destinations, right? So ensure that your housekeeping staff and through your management committee or whatever, ensure that that is how it is collected. And then when your either waste management service provider like companies like us or the local municipal corporations, tendered contractors, if you are living in an individual home or just a 8 flat multi-dwelling unit, when they take it, ensure that they don't mix it.
Yeah.
Demand.
Does that happen?
Of course, if you're the auto tipper guy, what does he do? He puts everything, all right, even if you're segregated, into the thing, and then cherry picks what is of value, like a Bisleri bottle or a Coke bottle. And he has these bags hanging by the side and he puts it into those carton boxes, paper. But most stuff, it goes mixed. And once it is mixed, you can't fix it.
Oh gosh, no. But near my house, it's basically wet waste. They come every day, and for dry waste, they come on Wednesdays and Saturdays.
Right. So you live in a ward which is one of the luckier ones, because Hasirudala and the local citizen group, WOW, I think it's called, actually made that happen. So the waste picker operated dry waste collection center collects your dry waste separately, and the wet waste separately, right? And therefore it's happening, but it doesn't happen across Bangalore, right? So that is that's the judge. So, for example, when we go to pick up, we pick up wet waste and rejects in one trip. We pick up the dry waste twice or thrice a week on a separate trip, because the optics matter. Because if the client sees that I'm not mixing it, then the motivation continues for him or her to segregate, continue segregating, right? Otherwise, the motivation will go. Why would I segregate if I can see that as it is collected that you're mixing it, the guy is mixing it anyway, right? And as I said, if you mix it, I can't fix it.
Oh gosh.
So, and there's simple things, right? For example, while a plastic bottle is valuable and people will pick it up, but if you have mixed it with your wet waste, it's already contaminated, which means that the cost of doing it increases. If your delivery boxes, you have left your food waste, leftover food in it, and just close the lid and put it in the dry waste, someone has to take up that decomposing food. Would you be the one wanting to do that? Think about the people who have to manage the waste after it leaves your home. Have a thought for them, right? So it is absolutely, as is you can. So that's so, but you have to hold the process afterwards, from the collection point onwards, someone accountable, right? Starts with that auto driver and the collector. Then participate in your ward committees. Right, every electoral ward or administrative ward in Bangalore has a ward committee, which citizens can go to. You can demand that the local corporator, MLA hold, and the BBMP folks hold those ward committee meetings. Go raise your thing now. Raise a complaint on the BBMP app. So there is ways of holding the bureaucracy and the local government accountable as well, right? But you have to take that effort. You can't say, I don't want to get involved, it's too much of a pain, or I don't have the time. You have to make the time, because the only way you can demand for your rights as a citizen is to participate in the democracy, right? It just can't be every 5 years I'll go vote, and if I haven't liked what was done the last 5 years, I'll vote them out. Is not sufficient, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Right? At the most, you have a revolving door government, but nothing changes on the ground.
Yeah. One of the things we did at Akshayakalpa was to launch a recycling initiative, where we asked our customers to rinse, dry, and return their packets. the hope, at least for me, like as a part of someone who's doing this on a regular basis, of course, washing Akshayakalpa's milk packets has become second nature. Like once you empty it, the next thing to do is to just rinse it and stick it to the kitchen slab. But the next step also is about washing every single plastic that is entering your kitchen.
If it's contaminated.
If it is contaminated, yes. And then just drying it and, and putting back. And it's become a beautiful practice that nothing goes into the dustbin without it being, washed.
Cleaned and dried, right?
Yeah. So if we do this, basically my understanding is that the recyclability of that plastic increases and the value increases, and so the waste picker is going to put it back in the system.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. So the whole thing about the circular economy at the end of the day is, how do we increase our resource recovery percentages, right?
Yeah.
And the better it is done at the point of generation, the higher the chances that it will get recycled. It's as simple as that, right? It's all about increasing the probability of it getting recycled, right?
So fix it at the source.
Fix it at the source. And it doesn't take too much time.
Yeah.
It doesn't take too much effort. I'm not asking you to put dishwashing liquid and wash it.
Yeah.
Just saying, make it reasonably clean and dry,
Yeah.
and put it in. That's all that we are asking, right? And I mean, since you talked about milk covers, one of the things that we do is aggregate milk covers, which gets recycled in Bidadi by a European company and goes to Europe. But the team where I have the highest churn are the people who segregate my milk covers.
Yeah.
Because they can't. It stinks. I don't know if any of you, please come to our aggregation center once.
Yeah, I've visited with Shri.
Right, obviously, because we were trying to work with you on that. People, at least one person will vomit in a day, right? So it's a simple step, can be done very easily. So, which is why I say, think of the process, think of the people who have to work on your waste so that it is managed well, and we recover as much resource as possible so that we use less virgin resources.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I know that because of our thing, you went back and looked at your product design.
Yeah.
Right? To make it more recyclable.
Yes.
Right? So as a producer, as a brand, you also realized that it was not just about how nice the package looked, but was the packaging fully recyclable? And you took steps to change that, right? So those are the kind of responsibilities I'm talking about as a brand, as a producer, as a manufacturer, as a citizen, right? And we just have to realize those things. Yeah. And then we can make the changes.
So as a citizen, my first step is to basically fix it at the source, which means I segregate it into 3 different categories, which is dry, wet, and rejects. In the dry waste, I wash it, dry it, and then
if it's contaminated.
If it is contaminated, otherwise you can just drop it. Compostable waste, which is your wet waste, needs to be segregated separately, and rejects is there. And when you're giving it, make sure that they are also collecting it separately. And it is being handled separately.
Absolutely.
So that's my responsibility. And just by me doing this, I'll be able to ensure that a lot of this waste goes into the recycling.
Absolutely. I'm saying that it can be up to 90% of the waste you generate is responsibly processed or managed.
That's brilliant.
Right. So it is possible, and it's not rocket science.
Yeah.
There's no, I mean, you don't need technology. You don't need anything to know. And today, websites like 2 bin 1 bag system, which Hasirudala and SWMRT were campaigned about, and it's now part of the High Court order, has a very simple, easy to understand pamphlets. What goes into wet, what goes into dry. About 9 years ago, so typically, since we are mostly South Indians who use a lot of coconut in our cooking, the coconut shell,
Yeah.
right? We think it is biodegradable. You're right.
Yeah.
It is biodegradable. But it should actually not go into wet waste. It should go into dry waste, because it is now become a tradable commodity that goes either for becoming charcoal, which can be burnt in thing, or to make carbon. So it is. So learn about those things. Learn about what are the possibilities, right? And now coconut shells have become a source of revenue for waste pickers.
Brilliant.
Right. So those are the things that just keep yourself. Takes a little effort.
Yeah.
Find thing. There are as I said, a pamphlet that you can just keep near your utility room. And if you ever heard out, let me quickly check.
Yeah.
Where should it go?
Yeah. So I understand now that plastic basically has 2 journeys, and we as consumers can pick the journey of the plastic, of things that we have already used. One is it goes back into recycling if we segregate it correctly, and it stays in the plastic cycle. Right. The other is if you don't segregate and you don't dispose it responsibly, it will go and come back in our air, water, and food. So we get to actually...
And it doesn't come back in a nice way.
It doesn't come back in a nice way, right? So we get to choose the cycle for every single piece of plastic that we are generating.
Right.
And it's not very far away from the air that we're breathing and water that we're drinking, isn't it?
Absolutely. And wherever possible, reduce your consumption of such things. For example, carrying a cloth bag, carrying a steel water bottle, or anything, or reuse, for example, right? Can you reuse stuff like when you go to take have takeout from the local darshini? Can you take your dabbas along, right? Can you on Zomato have the thing of don't send cutlery, right? So on, right? So there is on Zipto or Blinkit, don't send a paper bag.
Oh, you can do that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Right. So again, it's a one-time setting, right?
Oh.
You don't even have to do it every time you order. So these are ways you can actually make a difference, right?
Yeah.
So reduce, reuse, recycle should be your thought pattern.
Yeah.
Right. And demand the same of, as I said, Zepto, don't reduce. So you have reduced your paper bag that comes home. Right. So those are the ways. And we sometimes underestimate our own agency as individuals to bring about change. Right? We say we're not even a drop in that huge ocean. Will we make a difference? So we actually underestimate our own agency.
Yeah. No, like, so, I mean, because I'm now speaking to, people like you, people like Vani ma'am, one of the times I went with my friends to have chat, and, I opened my lunch dabba and I said, like, I'll have it in this. And of course, like, it gets met with, are you sure you want to do this? Like, everyone's getting a little uncomfortable around you. But then you start seeing that the next time you do the same thing, they're also like, yeah, this is fine. Like...
At the most, she's a little weird. We'll let her be, right? But yeah, I mean,
But the satisfaction it gives you of doing the right thing is...
right. Yeah. So don't use it or carry your own... I mean, see, each one of us are willing to put in only so much effort, right? The true activists will do everything, right? But you don't have to, right? That's what I'm saying. Simple things which very easily incorporated in your daily routines, right? Can make a difference, right? And also, I mean, for example, there's this place called Amchi Dilli near my house. And when he started, he was using all disposables, right? I kept going back to him and said, you have to use reusable plates, right? And he had all kinds. Then he finally agreed. He changed, right? I go to a chai shop. I say, don't you have a glass? Right. In fact, I've convinced a small tea shop near my
Lovely.
office to move from paper cups to this. Then he had problems of having people who could wash. So he keeps a glass only for me. I've gone to restaurants and hotels, talk to the managers and say, can you invest in a air dryer in your toilets so that we use less tissue? Right? There are restaurants who have agreed.
Wow.
And the next time I've gone there, I don't know whether I made the change happen, right? But you have to keep putting it out there. Truly underestimate our agency
Yeah,
as
no,
individuals.
very true.
So you can bring about change. I believe in this circle of control and circle of influence, right? And if you operate within that, then the rest will take care of itself, is my opinion.
So there is this report which says that, and it's by WHO, that Indian cities will become unlivable in another 5 to 10 years. What do you think is contributing? We spoke about this just before we started, but
Absolutely.
do you want to
Absolutely.
speak about the role of
So,
waste?
an urbanization, I think, is unfortunately something that's going to happen. All right. I mean, I heard someone from Niti Aayog the other day say that the government is pushing for 1,000 new cities in the country. So urbanization, I think, is going to happen, and I think the two biggest issues that all cities or all urban areas in India, or actually across the world, are going to face is pollution, air, water, land pollution from two major things. One is mobility, which is your transportation. This second is in terms of waste. These are going to be the two biggest problems that are going to face all cities. And these two problems will decide whether a city is livable or unlivable, right? Or is tending towards unlivable. And therefore, you have people leaving or your real estate prices dropping and so on. So if we do not handle the problem of waste, and as I said, it is not rocket science. We have proven, and multiple other organizations such as ours, we were maybe one of the pioneers, have proven that it doesn't take a lot to be responsible about your waste. We charge around 200 rupees per month per household for 31 days of pickup. All right. Is that you drop at a cafe coffee day or even on your Zomato tip, right? So it's nothing large, right? We are not asking for the moon. I mean, in California, for example, you pay $600 or more per quarter for 4-day pickup in a month, right? But the Western world generates waste very differently from us. Their wet waste is 20 to 30% only. Most of it is dry waste, and then the rejects, or what they call trash. So if they have, I mean, that's the other thing, right? I mean, too many people are talking about wealth out of waste, and I think that is people don't realize it's a myth. End-to-end responsible waste management is a negative value process. That is, the revenue or profits that you can earn from processing waste is less than what it costs to collect, responsibly transport to the right destination, dispose of it properly, or recycle it. The points in the value chain which make profit, but end-to-end, it's a negative value process, which means the amount of money you put in end-to-end, right? Not points in the value chain, is more than what you can get out of it. Now, as we become better at segregation, as we become better at collection, the resource recovery will go up. As technology improves, the yields and profit margins will go up. So the subsidy that is required from either the government or through a user fee, we call it the polluter pays principle, has to be there. So, so let's pay for waste. And, people tell me that in Bangalore, we pay a cess, SWM cess, as part of property tax. doesn't even cover your Pauri Karmika, the sweeper's salary, right? So, yes, hold the government accountable, but not in this, because you're not paying enough. So that's what I would, suggest. But it is going to be this second or on equal footing problem with mobility.
Wow. Sometimes we think that when we speak about food, of course, it's not being grown in the cities, it's grown in the villages, and villages are pristine and villages are untouched, and the waste problem has not reached the villages. What is your opinion on what's
the
happening?
waste problem has reached the villages. And it actually is a bigger problem there, because the infrastructure is not there. The distances for transporting dry recyclables is not there, is too high. If you really think about it, the biggest problem in dry waste, the costs are in transportation, because when I transport a Bisleri bottle, I'm transporting more air because it's volumetric. The Bisleri bottle is not heavy, right? So the transportation per kg of plastic is very high unless I bale it and compress it. Right. So so that's one of the issues. So they do not have enough systems in place, sometimes not enough quantity to be able to take it to a recycler at a price that is viable, and so on. So the other thing is, thanks to Prahlad's bottom of the pyramid strategies, we have these 1 rupee and 2 rupee sachets, or 5 rupees glucose biscuits. They're all non-recyclable. They are so difficult to pick up, right? And they are lying all around the road, right? Because people are using it, just throwing it, because they don't know what to do with it as a consumer. So the waste problem in villages actually is growing, and because they're so scattered, and the quantities are not large, we still do not know clearly how much damage they're doing. But the fact that they're either burning it or it's just piling up is not good news at all. So they're no longer pristine. And if but there are panchayats like Bethalsur Panchayat near Yalanka, where we are doing the services. We have through another organization called the Anonymous Indian Charitable Trust, we are doing 100% collection.
Wow.
Now our villagers have started saying, okay, we'll pay for it, because they're saying you guys are giving us service. The open drains just the open drains in any village, whether it's sewage or storm water, are no longer getting clogged. So the panchayat is actually spending less money on cleaning those drains, right? And there's no dump sites around. So
their soil is clean.
The soil is clean. They've been able to set up a dry waste sorting center and composting there itself. So that is going back to the farmers. So it can be done. And there are enough instances, right? Indore was an example of political and bureaucratic will. It took one commissioner to make it happen. Right? There are a lot of underbelly stories of what was not great about Indore, but let us take the fact that it just took one person with the right intent and the backbone to make it happen. Right? So that's what I always talk about. It's not rocket science. It just needs political, bureaucratic will and citizen participation. If you have those three coming together, it's done.
So there are places, right? Like Singapore also is another example of a country which was able to kind of, I've read reports on how they manage it within 24 hours. So how is it that they are doing it?
Yeah. So Singapore focus was always on visual cleanliness, all right? No littering. And for example, this 24-hour, it'll get collected and taken out of this, dealt with, right? But And they were able to do it because they have a very high littering fine. Right? If you look at most cities, most countries which have been able to bring about that level of civic sense and civic behavior, the price of non-conformance, PONC as it's called in quality systems, is very high. In the US, why do everyone wear a seatbelt? Not necessarily because they like it or they think it's truly safe, because if you get caught, it's $270. Maybe it's higher. It was $270 in the Bay Area when I used to live there, which is very high.
Yeah.
All right. So the price of non-conformance is high, but also ensuring that it does get implemented.
Yeah.
I can't get away with giving the policeman $10 there.
Yeah.
I have to pay the $270. It goes on my driving license as a negative point. I could lose my driving license and so on. Even same in Singapore. I don't know what the littering fine is now, but it's high enough for you to think 10 times before putting it on the ground, right? The unfortunate thing in Singapore, in my opinion, while it's a lot of talked about, is earlier they used to just dump it out of the sea and reclaim land, right? So they actually made an island and so on. But how much thing it actually caused, toxins was caused in the ocean before that land was reclaimed is unknown. The second is they tended to do waste to energy. Now, waste to energy in a tropical country is not the best, right? Waste to energy in European countries tended to help because it became a source of heat because their heating requirements are very high, right? In a place like Singapore or a thing where it's mostly tropical, where you don't require that heat, you're basically burning it under controlled conditions, so-called waste to energy, because the economics don't really work. And it becomes an excuse for you not to segregate, and therefore your resource recovery is very high. So if you look at Singapore's recycling rates, they're very low. Right? I don't know the latest estimates, but they're very low. Okay. So again, as I said, understand the whole value chain, right? Understand that your objective should be as much about resource recovery or repurposing it into a useful resource, like in the case of wet waste to biogas and so on. Those are the sustainable, viable options on a long term. Yeah. All right. Everything else is short term, in my opinion.
Yeah. And maybe just communities coming together and handling their ward, their.
Absolutely. Decentralized, I think, is the way to go, especially for very, very large metros.
Right.
And it could be as decentralized as 20 biogas plants around the city. Right? Because, as I said, we are densely populated in a metro like Bangalore. Land is always at a premium. Everyone wants to use it for something commercial, not necessarily they want it to be a public good, right? Whether it's parks or anything else. So,
yeah. Coming to one of the things that is happening quite a bit, which is greenwashing, which there are a lot of brands doing that. How do you think consumers should educate themselves, when it comes to any kind of consumption where they're trying to do good, do right, but there are a lot of brands playing this game?
Right. So, firstly, I think you should look at what their overall goals towards sustainability is, right? And how truly are they trying to change right from beginning, which is conceptualizing and designing a product, right? I talk a lot about designing out waste, just like you design in functions and capabilities of a product. Can you also don't just design in those features, but also design out waste, right? So, for example, why should a 2-battery Duracell packaging, if you look at the area, it's maybe a couple of 1 square inch, but that whole packaging is about 10 square inches. All right. Can you design out that waste? And there's again a multiple layer, right? There's paper, then there is
Yes.
plastic, which
Plastic.
is not easily taken out.
Yes.
So, so look at how deeply are your brands truly talking about it,
Yeah.
right? Just saying that I diverted 100 tons from the ocean isn't cutting it
Yeah.
anymore. Have you started using recycled content in your packaging, for example? And has it been done in a fair way? For example, Unilever launched Sunsilk last year, Sunsilk Oil Blends, a sub brand. And for the first time in the world, it has 50% recycled PET made from waste exclusively sourced from us. And on the packaging, it actually says fair trade guaranteed origin. And it says Hasiru Dala Innovations, a fair trade guarantee enterprise, supplied the post-consumer plastic waste for this bottle. Are they willing
Yeah.
to actually say what? So the shampoo itself is not fair trade or sustainable or anything. Nothing else. It's very clear. It was only the post-consumer plastic waste which has
Yeah.
come back.
Yeah.
Right. So how transparent are they? Right? Are they taking something very small and making it look as if they've churned the ocean?
Yeah.
Right. So those are, I think, the things that you should look for, and whether they're consistently doing it. Consistently decreasing their footprint, carbon footprint of their products. Are they thinking of not just their product life cycle as ending at consumption, but also post-consumption, right? The whole idea of extended producer responsibility, which came from Europe, came about saying that what you used to earlier consider as an externality and a cost that you did not have to bear, we have now put it as part of your responsibility, which is post-consumption, what happens to what is left of your product. Right, whether it's packaging or it's a dead product, let's say a dead Samsung phone, are you going to be responsible for it or not? Right. So that's what I would say. So as consumers, I always say this, again, consumers don't realize how much agency they have. Vote with your wallet. Right? The minute a brand manager sees that his or her market share is going down because these people are going towards more sustainable products, these people, the market share leader, will change.
Yeah.
Right? Because pinch them where it affects most, which is market share.
Brilliant. I hope a lot more of that happens. Another problem in today's day and age, and I face it quite a bit, is eco-anxiety, right? Like you see things around you breaking. You see everything that you once loved getting affected so badly. And you feel very helpless in those situations. What would your advice to youngsters be, on how should they handle this?
So given my age, I'm going to say this. Our generation screwed it up. But you have the opportunity to change it. And the only way you're going to change it is by your consumption habits, post-consumption habits, which is from where I come from in terms of waste. But vote with your wallet and influence the people around you to think about the same thing. Right? And don't do it in an aggressive, I know better than you kind of thing, but just by your own behavior, set an example. Right? For example, the simple things, right? We find that children are the best change agents within a household because they will go and say, Dad, you put it in the wrong bin. All right. So I think, you guys have the opportunity because we are also in a world today where there is so much more consumption because there's so much more wealth that has been created across. So many people have been pulled out of poverty. A lot of us are in middle class. Therefore, we spend a lot of money. And finally, money talks in a capitalist structure. So, spend your money wisely. in terms of, I'm not saying save or anything, that's up to you, but where do you spend it on? What do you spend it on is going to determine your own futures.
Yeah. So, what is the future of food for city dwellers?
So I think, we firstly, I think, as urban dwellers, we don't even realize how hard it is to grow today good, clean food, right? Which is not contaminated with insecticides, pesticides, or other toxins in the soil and so on. So let's encourage farmers. Let's encourage farmer producer organizations, uh, cooperatives, organizations such as yourselves. How can we grow food sustainably? I think there is another opportunity as well. We have a terrace in our apartment, and we grow a lot of vegetables. Uh, uh, and we are able to grow enough for about 8 to 10 days consumption. Right, we still have to buy, but and there are things like onions and potatoes and all. We are not attempting to think, but a lot of greens, chilies, lime, all of that we grow. Right, I think there is an opportunity for having your terrace gardens, balcony gardens, and it would be very interesting because you have control of how you're growing it, and you are bringing down the carbon footprint of getting things transported to your place, and it's fresh off the plant, so to say, from your home. So I mean, you'll never be able to do it so that you can consume everything like that. But again, it's a small but significant dent that you can put.
Yeah.
And so, encourage farm to table kind of things and so on, and buy as much as you require. Don't buy more than what you require. If you're throwing away rotten tomatoes, you should be asking, do you know your own consumption? Right. And if you are enthusiastic enough, you can make organic disinfectants and cleaners out of your fruit peels. It takes a little extra effort, but again, those are things that you can do. So
Yeah. Okay, so we also have another section. We call it this or that. There are two things that I'll tell you, and you can tell me what you think of it.
Okay. One of those rapid fire things.
Yes. Waste reduction or better recycling?
Waste reduction.
Reusable containers or biodegradable packaging?
Reusable.
Individual action or system change?
Both.
Okay. Home composting or community composting?
Home composting.
Okay. That's the end of it. Thank you so much, Shekar, for coming and sharing all these insights, which I think most of us don't know about or haven't really stopped to think about. Thank you for coming and sharing this with us.
Thank you for having me, and thank you everyone here who made this happen. And I have a lot of respect for what you do, and wish you all guys all the best.
Thank you. Thank you, Shekar.